Thanks for checking out the GUI I made to control the custom firmware Poly 800 known as the Hawk 800, or you may have an EX 800 that has the Hawk 800 modification in it. The modification, of course, is a custom set of chips with brand new firmware written to control the features further in depth. This is the standalone version. You're going to find the link. The link will take you to a page that looks like this. You're going to see a file similar to a name like this. You'll see right above it, open with zip extractor. You could try and do that, but it's not going to do much. Hopefully you have your own zip app. So what you want to do is go over here and press this download button over here on the upper right. And when you do that, you'll see your usual pop-up to save the file. Save the file, and what you'll do is you'll go to where you saved it, and you'll open the zip file, and inside the zip you will find the exe file, which is highlighted right there. You'll have a readme file, and then you'll also have the DLL file that you can try and play around with the VST. So you would take this file, the DLL file, and put that in your VST folder and then load it up in your DAW. And you can try to use it, but right now I've been having problems with it, so I'm not going to cover it right now. I'm just going to cover getting you going on the standalone. The README text, I'm going to quickly cover that. When I get this done, it's going to basically say what it's for, and then it's going to explain that this works best if you use firmware version 2.65L, which is 2.65L as in Lucy, and you can get that by going to this link right here. So if you go there, you will end up on this page, and the firmware I'm speaking of is right here. If you click on that, it will automatically take you to the next page that starts to download it for you. Click on that, and it says it's going to start shortly. I'm going to back out of that because I already have it. But make sure you scroll down and read this. The version 2.6 software is available, but it's for boot code 199. So make sure you read all this and understand what you need to do to get the firmware updated. That's not in the scope of this tutorial video. If you have problems getting your firmware updated, please see Mike at the forum. Korg Poly EX 800, I think it is, Yahoo page. Going back to the README file, the GUI right here is made by using something called controller, and you can go to their site, which is right here. When you download the file, you're going to see your file where you saved it. Click on it. It will open up, like I said, into your zip file. Then you can extract it, or some of them will go ahead and just open up. In my case, I could double click this and it will open up and we will be here. There are several different drop down menus. I'm not going to cover all of these. Right now I just want to get it going. This is setting up the MIDI interfaces. When you have your MIDI interfaces to use with this, make sure that they are hooked up and ready to go before you start the app, because if they are not hooked up, the app will not, of course, see them later on when you go to patch them in. So like for me, I have a MIDI Sport Uno, which is a USB MIDI interface. If I started the app, I wouldn't see it if it wasn't plugged in. If I plugged it in while the app was still open, it would not show up. I would have to close the app and then reopen it, and then I could see it. But here's my setup. I have the MIDI port as my input. I have a keyboard made by M-Audio called Ozonic, and that's what I use for actual keys to play Hawk 800, because those keys are velocity sensitive for one, and they're right in front of me in my desk, where I have the actual Poly 800 sitting over to one side because it's kind of big and the way I have it set. The output, again, my MIDI Sport Uno. And what's going on here is the GUI actually acts like a MIDI mixer. So my keyboard can actually control, well, what'll happen is I'll play my keyboard, it goes, the keyboard goes into the computer through USB, sends a MIDI signal into the computer, it comes to this GUI, the GUI hears it, and it goes ahead and it routes it back out to the MIDI Sport Uno. So when I play this device, the note messages go out this device. Now the input from the MIDI Sport Uno is of course from the output of the Korg synthesizer. And what it's going to do is every time I change patches, you see the knobs move. And what it's doing is every time I select a different patch, it is requesting the patch information from the Korg, and the Korg replies and sends it back to the input. And when the GUI hears that sysx message, it extracts the information out of that message and sets all of these parameters. I was trying to watch the ones at the top, and you can see, trying to find one that changes the ones at the top, and let's try, there we go. See, you saw the waveforms were changed, you saw the modulator change. So that's why we want to use a separate interface for the input and the output, and then another device for an actual keyboard controller. So once you get that all hooked up, then you can have some fun. Find patch number 12. What does that sound like? Pretty neat. What if I turn down the volume? Interesting. Anyway, this is the volume control. Sometimes to get a good effect, you have to turn another knob down so you can hear something like tremolo depth. See, this tremolo depth isn't heard very well if you have the volume all the way up. Turn it down and you hear it much more pronounced. You can hear the volume turn up, go down, turn up, go down. So anyway, that's your volume. This is your pitch bend. And it is a spring-loaded pitch bend, or you have a static pitch bend, which will essentially, when I move it and let go, it will stay put. Now if I move this up and keep it in place, and then use this control and pull it and turn it, it will snap at it. Essentially it will rob this value and this value will take over. Did you hear it just all of a sudden drop down to normal pitch? So you have those two pitch controls. when you float over some of these buttons, you'll see the cursor turn into a hand. You'll notice that on the knobs it doesn't turn into a hand, but over some of these buttons right here it does. This button here, if you have your sequencer enabled, you can start and stop the sequencer by pressing on that button. Right now my sequencer is not enabled. You can change your poly mode by pressing the poly button. Essentially these buttons here simulate the buttons that are on your actual synthesizer. If I press hold, then I press a key, it just holds it, and you can have a drone effect. Now, the poly mode is also repeated in other stuff right here under poly mode, and you can choose a chord, hold, portamento. Let's see if I can get portamento to work. Sure sounds like it's working to me. I can go back to poly mode, and of course we don't have portamento. Unison. Unison portamento is like a chord and gliding a chord. You essentially you start with a hold mode, you choose a chord, then you are basically in a chord mode that slides. Play around with it. Now I do want to point out below here is the pitch bend adjustment. If you turn that all the way down, you have no pitch bend. You turn it all the way up, and you have massive pitch bending. You turn it midway, you have less range in your pitch bend. Another feature that affects pitch bend is this right here in the DCO modulation. DCO modulation is of course changing in pitch. You have a normal mode and you have the bend mode. If you use bend mode, you don't have control over your pitch bend. Turn it to normal. The reason why is because you can get a much bigger range on your modulation. Let's see if I can turn this on. You can hear the modulation. I believe it's the pitch modulation. But if you turn it to bend mode, you get a larger change in pitch. Just check that one or this one if you can't get your pitch bend to work. This is your LFO1 speed, LFO2 speed. Now keep in mind, up here is your modulator that you choose. Here's your first one, here's your second one. Now LFO1 is this speed control. LFO2 is this speed control. SLO, or I call SLOFO 3, is this speed control. SLOFO 4 right here. This is your depth control for either one. If you are in SLOFO modulator mode, this will control it. If you're, when I change this speed control and I'm in SLFO3, it's not going to do anything. change it to LFO1, so you can see what's going on there. Now again, kind of like earlier when I showed you the volume knobs, sometimes you have to turn filter all the way down to get a better effect from the depth control over here. You just have to play around with these controls to get familiar with them. This is your pulse width modulation, which is essentially when you choose PWM, it's a square wave. When you turn to pulse width modulation, if you hear nothing, it's probably because PWM is turned all the way down. You need to turn it up to start to give the pulse width some width. Turn it all the way up and you'll hardly hear anything again. This is delay. If you read your manual, you'll notice that you can start the modulation immediately and then shut off, or start without modulation and have a delay and then come on. You can have your start or ending point chosen right here. You'll have to play around with it to get it to see it to do its trick. This FX knob, and now when I say FX, you'll see that word everywhere. That is a depth control. So whenever you see FX, just think depth. So modulation depth. Your envelope generator effect. Play around with these controls. You've got filter, your LFO1 speed, your VCF modulation depth control. So if you're wanting a modulation control for your filter, then that's going to be these two controls here. If you want DCO to do it, this is it here, and you can pick your modulator over here. You can pick your waveforms right here. You can do the same for resonance. And again, here's your depth. And this is where you're following the envelope generator number 3 right here. SLFO3 has a depth control that when you turn this up, the LFO3 is going to influence this control right here. It's kind of like when you have a low waveform, slow moving waveform. This speed control will follow the waveform from SLFO3. That's what I seem to understand and hear going on when I use these controls. So just play around with it. You can kind of hear the speed changes up and down. If you turn this off, it's just steady. Turn this up, and you can hear it's changing the speed. This is pulse width control for SLFO3. So if you choose pulse width control for SLFO3, this will be your pulse width control for that. Your filter has other controls, and your resonance under this tab, the Tomahawk tab. You can pick your 12 decibel and your 24 decibel filter right here. Turn your aggressive resonance on. Let's see if I can get number 3 and number 26. Kind of give you an idea what aggressive resonance does, and it will get very, very loud, and feedback will happen. So watch it when you get those controls going. You have your FM modes found in here. I'm not going to go into all that. Just play around with it. Here's source modulation, triangle. There's another tab here. You can turn chorus on and off. And if you have a Mark II, you can mess with the delay and the bass and treble controls here. I don't have a Mark II, so I can't test it, but I do know when I move the control, I see my Poly 800 Mark I respond. Up at the top, here is your, you choose which LFO you want to affect the filter. You have 2 different ones you can choose, and then these are the waveforms that you can choose for that modulator. Over here is the slow-fo modulator wave drop-down menus. So if I want to hear a slow sine wave, so you can hear a slow-fo working there with the sine wave, and it's just basically making a very slow adjustment to the filter. There is free run. Free run is if it's on, it is freely running all the time. If it's off, it just triggers the same start point every time. So you have free run on several of these, like VCF first modulator is a free run here, second modulator right here, slow-fo 3 right here, and 4 right here. LFO1 phase control drop-down menu is right here. That essentially what that means is if you have a sine wave, you will start at a certain angle of attack, go up and then come down, and then to go down and then back up. Well, you can change where you start. So if you start here and climb up here and come down here and then down there, that is 0. I believe 90 degrees, maybe start up here at the top and then you work your way down and then back up. And 180 degrees means you start possibly in the middle, it goes down, then comes back up. And 270 means that you start at the very bottom and then you work your way all the way up and then back down. If you can follow what I'm trying to say, it's shifting the start point of the wave. Of course, you're probably wanting to look at this down here. These are the envelope generators, and I made a graphical one. And when you move this around, you can see how, in a somewhat fashion, what the sound is going to be affected like. So your breakpoint is going to move like this, and your slope is after the breakpoint. It's like another attack or decay, depending on the breakpoint and the sustain. So you can see how you can get some really funky waveforms right here. Now the cool thing is, here's DCO2, hasn't been changed. DCO1 looks wildly different. DCO2, you want it to be the same as DCO1. What do? Press copy. Now DCO2 is exactly the same. Change this one. And you can't change the other one back. Okay, but you can go DCO1 to DCO2. So if I want to put it like this, copy it, there you go. I'm going to go ahead and change the sound back to there. VCF, this is the depth control for the VCF envelope generator, and if you hit invert, it will turn it upside down. So it will start open and then close the filter, and then start opening it up a little bit and level out, and then when you let go, it'll open it back up again. Or go back to your usual positive envelope generator, and it's right here. But it automatically changes when you click from one tab to the other. I'll turn that down a little bit, or turn it way up. Now the cool thing is if I change this, it changes on the other one too. So if I put a long, change it like that and invert it, it follows. Anyway, again, you have to play around with this, and again, you have a relationship between how much you turn this up and how much you turn the filter down. So if you want to hear you'll have to play around with the sustain a lot. If you have a low sustain, then you have a wider range with your filter here. It's usually what I find. Over here is the oscillator. This is the first oscillator. Here's your second oscillator, and you can pick your octave, low, medium, high. And of course I'm in double mode right now, so we have a second one. And while in double mode, we have a detune. You can pick square, pseudo sawtooth, because it's not really a sawtooth, it's kind of a stair step type of thing. Harmonics, you can choose any combination of harmonics you want turned on or off. Turn them all on, turn them all off. So here's with them all off. Oh, we hear nothing. Turn 16 on. Number 8. Number 4. Number 2. 16 and 8. 16 and 4. And as you see, it goes on and on and on. Turn all of them on. If I turn this on, what it's essentially doing is it's, I believe it's turning on and off these tones in a certain order. It's turning them on and off, and you can control the speed by the modulator, and then you can control the rate and the shape of the modulation here. This is your tremolo. That's where it affects the volume, and I believe there's only one. I think it's a triangle wave, and only a triangle wave. You have your noise here. And of course, your noise is affected by the VCF EG. And down here at the very bottom is the right patch. If you click that button, what will happen is it will save anything you've changed. I've had this right button essentially done so that if you're done messing with the sound, you like it, okay, patch 26 and bank 3 will be saved with that sound if you press that button. And it doesn't pop up and ask, is this okay? It's just going to do it. So that's why it's red. That's why it's way down here by itself. But I found that sometimes I go and reach over and touch those buttons on the synthesizer, and I think, well, I'm going to hit right, and then I'll hit 15, and I press the 1 and accidentally hit it twice, and what I just did was I wrote over patch 11. That kind of stunk when every time I double hit the 1, I'd save over patch 11. Well, this can kind of alleviate that problem. Just as soon as I'm done messing with the controls and like what it is and want to save it right there, press that button and it'll save the new settings. Anyway, have fun with it, play with it, and give me some feedback. What do you think of it? There's velocity settings. The settings here affect the way how hard you hit the keys, and I can't go through all of it right now, but everything that's in the manual you're going to find here. And down here is a new control. Look up PT47 in the manual and it'll explain what this does. But what it does is one of the modulators is going to control, I think it's SLFO3, controls the depth of VCF1 modulator, whereas this control controls the speed, this control controls the depth using another LFO. And it'll follow the waveform and whatnot. But down here is your envelope G3 trigger for your VCF right here. And this will basically let you choose single or multi. That means you hold start with one key, and then you, while you're holding that key, press another key. Either the envelope will re-trigger or just continue. And I think the single means it'll just continue, and multi means if you hold one key and press the second key, once you hit the second key, it will re-trigger the envelope. You do have LFO sync up here. I haven't messed with that, but I put it in there. When you turn it, it will affect your synth. You got a sample and hold rate control right here. And also, if you put your mouse over these controls and turn your scroll wheel, you can adjust the knob. Some of these knobs are notchy because they have lower values. So like the LFO1, it only has 15 notches, whereas filter has like 99, so it's a lot smoother. I think resonance only has 31. No, it goes to 99. These go to 30. So you'll notice that some you have to move the scroll wheel a lot more than others. Like LFO1, you can move that pretty fast. Also, I've designed it so that you can click on the knob and while holding your mouse button down, come out, and then you can have fine control over your knob rather than try and control the knob from close in. You're not going to have very good control if you try to click and just hold right in here. Click on it, bring your mouse out further, and you'll find that you'll have much smoother control of like the filter and the resonance. Don't have any other tips. We do have the notes off up here, so if I hit the button, I got it hold on, click the notes off, and all notes shut off. Pretty easy. Again, I said that there's some bugs that some things may not change correctly. If you go from one patch, let's say if I change the bank, you'll notice that none of the controls change. Your patch will change to bank 126. So you have to set that in your global settings. Here's bank 2. Here's bank 3. But none of the controls have changed. If you want to see what the controls look like, you'll have to change to another patch and come back to it. Haven't fixed that problem. But it is cool that you can go around to the different banks and patches and do it quickly, visually, like this. Let's see. I have this sound. And I'm able to make these sounds pretty quickly, or a lot easier by using this GUI. Here's another nice sound. For the noise. Number 44, let's see. Number 46. Let's see. was sounds like a square wave on the DCO. Let's see what else we have here. 53. That's the harmonic being affected. And let's see, number 54. Number 55. And number 61. Number 76. Number 77. Number 87. Some pretty cool stuff. Let's see, number 2 and 16. Let's go up an octave. And let's go to number 3, number 26 again. So, as you can hear, the Korg Poly 800 can still make some very cool sounds. Anyway, I hope you like this. Hopefully this was informative enough to show you how to get going on this, and hope you enjoy. Thanks.